On this episode, we are going to talk about a building whose services once touched every household in Anoka. That's right, I'm talking about the historic Old Anoka Post Office on this episode of It's Your History. Coming up next on the show, the Anoka County Historical Society's Ebnet-Mavencamp gives us a little bit of the history of the old post office.
Harry Potter used owls, the Greeks had Hermes, and Genghis Khan tied his messages to carrier pigeons. People throughout history have always developed ways of moving their ideas from place to place. Colonial communication in America began in 1639, when the General Court of Massachusetts designated a Boston tavern owned by Richard Fairbanks as the official repository of mail brought from and sent from overseas. The system later employed the use of stagecoaches, railroads, the Pony Express, and motor vehicles to become the institution we know today. Minnesota joined the story courtesy of Fort Snelling, which became the first post office of the territory. Some community post offices were established in the late 1840s, though more commonly a decade later. By 1870 in Anoka County, 10 offices had been established. This doubled by 1900, only to trickle back to 5 and 6 offices by 1978. The story begins in Monticello, when Jane Lydia Jordan and her family attended a service at the Baptist Church. She heard a voice from behind offer up a prayer and fell in love with the man before even laying eyes on him. The man was Samuel Patterson Sterrett, aged 1 year older than Jane, who later changed her name to Jenny. His family had moved to Minnesota in 1856 from New Brunswick. During their early courtship, Sam farmed. However, years of drought and grasshoppers, he and many other farmers could not make a living. Sam sought other work in Michigan, hoping to make enough money one summer to return home in the fall and prepare to plant a crop the following spring. He dreamed of a future where he had a nice little prairie farm and house with flowers and trees and a partner to help keep the weeds away. But fall came and Sam didn't arrive back in Minnesota. He and Jenny's brother, Judd, continued to make good money, so decided to stay in Michigan with plans to come home in the spring, get married, and return to Michigan. 1 year to the day of Sam leaving, he wrote a letter in which he recalled his last day with Jenny. They had sat by the stove after everyone else had gone to bed, and then walked up the stairs where he gave her a parting kiss. Little did they know their time apart would grow as talk of the Civil War began. By June, Sam was sending letters asking if it would be all right if he went south to fight. On July 28, 1861, Sam wrote that he and Judd had signed on with the 1st Michigan Volunteers, and they were in Ann Arbor. Later, by the end of 1861, Jenny's parents moved away from Monticello, and she began lodging with a family named Weeks, caring for their baby. On June 27, 1862, Sam was reported missing and presumed dead, while Judd was killed in action at the Battle of Gaines Mill, just outside Richmond, Virginia. Imagine Jenny's surprise when she received a letter dated August 4, 1862, stating Sam was now in the hospital in New York. Mr. Weeks wrote soon after, saying he had traveled to New York and had seen Sam. The bullet went through Sam's left temple and exited through the right eye. He sank to the ground, and then, presumed dead, he lay on the battlefield for 24 hours for fear the enemy would finish him off. The enemy did finally return, and Sam was taken to the loathsome Richmond Tobacco House prison. 3 weeks later, they released Sam as part of a prisoner exchange, and he was sent to New York. Mr. Weeks reported Sam was doing well, with no deformity except that his right eye was sunken and he was completely blind. Winter approached, and Sam entered the asylum in Michigan, to learn to play music and read and write. As 1863 continued, Sam received a melodeon and piano stool from the New England Soldiers Relief Association so that he could use his new playing skills to teach music and earn a living in addition to his soldier's pension. Sam returned home after 3 years' absence to marry Jenny in Minneapolis on June 2nd. After selling books for a living, the couple arrived in Anoka in June of 1866. They had 3 children, Francis, Carrie, and Alice. They built a house on 2nd Avenue, just off Main Street, and opened a small store and peanut stand next door. Sam was appointed postmaster of Anoka on February 4th, 1868, and served as such until January 25th, 1873. Though being blind, I'm sure he had more than a little help from Jenny in sorting the mail in the store. The huge fire of 1884 spared their home and store, but Sam decided to relocate the house to its current location on Madison Street and 4th Avenue, while also selling the store. Jeannie and Sam attended the Anoka Baptist Church, where Sam played the organ until his death on January 13, 1913. Jenny passed away 10 years later. You have the opportunity to hear more about Sam and decide for yourself if he ever really left Anoka by joining one of the ghost tours hosted by the Anoka County Historical Society. Check our website to make your reservation.
That was some fascinating information that really gives us a lot of perspective on the history of the building. Coming up next, we're going to get a chance to find out a little bit about the construction of the building. Next on It's Your History.
Thanks for joining me. I've been waiting for you. Sorry about that. I was just booking a council member to be a guest on News and Views. What is News and Views, you ask? News and Views is a monthly city-based news program where we interview city council members and staff members from the cities of Andover, Anoka, Champlin, and Ramsey. We cover news that you care about, hot topics, and city functions that are happening in your own backyard. So tune in to News and Views on your local channels 15 and 16 and also on the web at QCTV.org. Hope to see you there.
Coming up next on the show, we're going to use all of our resources at the Anoka County Historical Society to learn all about the construction of the old post office.
the best that can be done on this building, and if the department still desires to make the change in brick, it is recommended the proposal be accepted. Mason on windows area. Laborers bending wire for beam casing, unloading equipment etc. 1 foreman, 1 carpenter, 1 mason, 6 laborers. Sir, reference is made to the progress photographs for July of the post office building Anoka, Minnesota, being erected under your supervision, and your attention is called to the fact that the photograph shows very clearly that the flat arches over the basement windows have been omitted. You are requested to report why you permitted the construction to be placed as shown by the photographs. In my opinion, it will not only be difficult, but impossible to properly set the window arches if the water table were in place, and I will not think of permitting such construction. Masons on front and rear wall, 1 foreman, 1 carpenter, 2 masons, 4 laborers. Mason on west walls, completed lot and on end front, plumber jumping to test underground work, 1 foreman, 1 carpenter, 2 masons, 1 cement finish, 1 plumber, 6 laborers. Since the signing of the contract for the building, the city of Anoka has started the construction of a comprehensive system of sanitary and storm sewers, the former embracing a suitable treatment of the sewage before its discharge, the line with which our private sewer was to connect forming part of the sanitary system, construction of which is well underway and will be completed before the completion of the post office. Carpenters on rafters, dormers, ceiling joists, etc., masons on north wall and stack, foreman, cement finisher and laborers, erecting and riveting steel, laborers grading driveway, etc., 1 foreman, 5 carpenters, 2 masons, 1 cement finisher, 8 laborers. Dear sir, we are estimating a post office for Neenah, Wisconsin, which is Anoka over again with certain changes. The office has caught some of the bulls we have led up with you, but not all of them. We note that on the Neenah job, 14 asphalt felt is specified under the slate. No such felt is required at Anoka. The roofing people say that it is always desirable to lay slate on felt. I call your attention to the matter at this time so that we won't get tied up when we get that far along. Yours truly, W.D. Lovell. Carpenters on partitions and framing, mason cleaning and painting, plumbers running soil and vent piping, electricians running conduits, mezzanine, floor and attic, slate on main roof, sheet metal workers on main gutter, laborers concreting basement, floor, complete. 1 foreman, 6 carpenters, 1 concrete finisher, 2 plumbers, 1 electrician, 1 slate, 2 sheet metal, 8 laborers, 1 mason. The office is in receipt of an inspection report of the 13th instant, submitted by Supervising Superintendent Packard in connection with his recent visit to the U.S. Post Office, Anoka, Minnesota, in which he states that the work has been entirely completed in a very satisfactory manner. It is noted that this contract is practically finished 2 months ahead of time, for which the Post Office wishes to commend both yourself and the Superintendent.
Fascinating. Coming up next, we're going to hear from 2 people who had intimate knowledge of the inner workings of the post office. Coming up next on It's Your History.
Inviting you to watch the local show on QCTV, where we'll meet some great organizations and people that go above and beyond to serve your communities. If you have a story of hope, generosity, or want to share a story of inspiration to chase dreams, share it with us at QCTV. We'd love to share your story with the rest of the community, and your story could be featured on the local show.
In this next segment, we're going to hear from both former clients of the old post office as well as former employees.
Here with us today are Barb Thurston and Bob Nelson, two people that have some personal knowledge of the old post office. So we're going to start with Barb, who went to the old post office as a girl, and you actually had some experience inside there as a person coming to buy stamps.
Well, when I was probably 4 or 5, 6, somewhere in there, when my mom went to town, she would take my sister and I. My sister's a year younger than I am. And we'd go into town, and the post office was awesome. It was this huge building, stately building on Main Street. And you'd park in the front, and there were parking meters back then. So we'd go up the big, massive stairway, the steps outside, go into the lobby, and the lobby was beautiful. It was all marble, and all the big brass P.O. boxes were lining the walls. It was just awesome, and the big stairway going up was quite amazing. And then Mom would walk up to the little window, and it was pretty tall, so as little kids we couldn't see in the window. And she'd buy her stamps, or she'd mail a package, or whatever she was doing. And I remember that the window was pretty high, and the clerks were always very nice, but it seemed a little intimidating as a child to be in something that big and stately. It was kind of, I don't know, like it's like church. You weren't supposed to talk, or you weren't supposed to do anything, and that sort of thing. But that's kind of what I remember of that era when I was a child.
Okay. There's some pretty large arched windows there too, right?
Yes, they're big windows that came into the lobby, let all the sun in and stuff. So it was beautiful. And I remember there were other government offices. I believe the draft board was upstairs, and the courthouse, of course, was across the street. So there was a lot of business people coming in and out of the post office all the time, picking up mail in these big, tubs of letters and mail that were coming in and out of there. So I was kind of impressed.
Yeah. I know you had mentioned the draft office. Now, Bob, you'd said that you have some experience up there as well.
My first walk in an Anoka post office was probably in the year 1950. I just graduated from Anoka in 1950 and got this letter in the mail to register for the draft. So into the draft board I went. That's the first step I ever took in the old post office. And I was just amazed at, like Barb said, the marble and granite. And the only building that I thought was comparable to that office was the Carnegie Library. But I went up the steps to the draft board. Miss Sari was there and registered for the draft. And that was the last time I was in the office until I started working there in 1958. I have a lot of memories of the old post office, the people working there, and how we managed to run that post office, delivering mail to Anoka, Coon Rapids, most of Blaine, all the way to Northtown, and not expanding, but finally we did expand. We went downstairs.
I heard there were some pranks that went on in that building between everybody.
Some pranks?
Yeah.
Did you tell her about them?
Yes.
Well, somehow or other, this biggest prank was one of the janitors was Johnny Blair. And Johnny Blair, he was kind of guy, he told it like it is, and nobody pulled any pranks on John. And Neil Pratt he was a carrier with me in that room I'm telling you about. He put a fish in John Blair's locker by the furnace. And sooner or later, the smell came around. And everybody was blaming everybody else, and John was he was furious that somebody would do that to him, put that fish, rotten fish. And it was a terrible smell, so they finally came out, and I guess they did find out that it must have been Neil Pratt. So Neil and John never get along together after that.
Then I know as the post office grew, we built the new one. And Barb, you had a rural route there too, correct?
Yes. And when I first started, I started in 1978. The new post office was built, I believe they went in there in 1977. So it was just prior to when I started that they moved over. And the rural carriers all drove their own cars. And we had to squeeze all those parcels and everything in those cars. We were responsible if we got stuck in the winter. We had to put our own fuel in there. It was a challenge.
Sure.
I happened to start in July, which was probably one of the lighter times of the year. But, and I started for Neil Pratt, and the old timers were taking bets to see if that little girl could make it. And I stuck in there. I had 2 older brothers. That's tough. And we had one of the nicest carriers we had was one of the first women, Bob remembers, Olita Fields. And she was like our den mother, so she'd give us advice and stuff, and she'd tell stories about when she first started, how she had to sometimes calm the men down in the morning. They'd get in a little off-color words and things. She'd have to remind them a lady was present. So she was kind of like our den mother. She was very nice.
Thanks again for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Well, you're so welcome.
Yep,
Thanks.
Those are truly some amazing stories. After the break, we're going to find out a little more about current use. Coming up next on It's Your History.
Hello, I'm James Stewart, Sheriff of Anoka County, and I'd like to invite you to watch The Sheriff Show on QCTV. On the show, we feature various divisions within our office, including Patrol, K-9, SWAT, community events, the dive teams, and much more. So tune into The Sheriff Show on your local channel 15 and 16 and keep up to date on what's happening at the Anoka County Sheriff's Office.
The Postal Service has relocated the post office to this new location. In this next segment, we're going to talk to a business owner that's in the old building, as well as the current postmaster in this building.
My name is Carol Thompson, and I am the owner of Teacher's Pet here in the old post office building, of the lower level of the building. And I've been here for 13 years. It'll be 13 years in May. We have an old schoolhouse feel here. We have old desks, and we use them as displays for product. Since I've been here, there's been many different businesses that have come and gone, and we've had people come in from the street just to look at the building. They're very curious as to what we have here and what the building was used for. Oftentimes they're not aware that it was a post office building formerly. When they come into my shop, they're a little hesitant to come in because a lot of them remember it as being the post office and they were not allowed to come downstairs. So it's been kind of fun to see them and their reactions, and oftentimes if they have children, they'll find mail chutes. There's one right behind me, and very curious as to why those chutes are there and what they were used for. So it gives us a little opportunity to talk about the building and what it was years ago. We've got different people passing by. One of the drawbacks maybe to the building is that oftentimes people don't recognize it as a building that housed retail shops. So that's been a little bit a little difficult on our part to get people to come into the building for the purpose of coming into our shops and seeing what we have and hopefully purchase what we have. So it's a wonderful place to have a retail shop.
Years ago, most of these routes were walking. So what would happen is we didn't have vehicles, as many as we do now, because they would walk literally right out of that building on Main, and they would have green boxes located throughout their routes. So we'd have one employee run around, put the day's mail for them certain areas inside these boxes, and the carriers would just follow the mail, grab their mail out of those boxes on the corner, and then continue delivering. Well, what that said is the inception with the mail volumes, we had to buy more vehicles. There was little or no parking. There was no indoor parking. During the dead of winter, the supervisors and the carriers were out there jump starting their vehicles, doing whatever they could to get out to their routes. So that's also a big benefit out of this facility. We have indoor parking. With the inception of automation, We had very minimal goals at the beginning. We would come up with sector segment. Back in the 70s, the carriers, in the mid-80s, the carriers would report to work and they would have stacks and stacks and stacks of trays of mail that they were required to case into an exact delivery order. Every address in Anoka, 55303, is on a case out here. So the carriers would literally start at 6 in the morning and they would work 4 to 5 hours in the office placing mail in delivery order in this case. Then they would pull down that case and then go out and deliver it. Now with the automation is they get a little bit of flat volumes, magazines, whatnot, and a half a foot of letter mail. Where before they would probably case in 16 feet of it, 14 feet of letter mail. One of the main reasons why we were relocated, and a lot of this occurred throughout the country, is there was an explosion in actual mail volume in the mid-80s. And with that, also workload. Then you throw on deliveries in the community, new homes popping up left and right. We were building routes as quick as possible. We outgrew our buildings. What really kind of saved us to be able to even utilize in this facility is we started automating all of our letter mail. In other words, the letter carriers don't touch probably 97% of letters, bills, anything in a letter format. The inception of bills, credit cards, all of the innovation and where the change that was occurring in the world also generated a lot more mail volume. Where before you used to just get a letter from mom and pop or service members, whatnot. It went to a whole different level with the advent of the credit cards, mortgages, advertisement, all of that. They've seen some real value in that sort of business, has seen real value in that. So they really pushed us hard. And we were geared, as a matter of fact, with the parcel post, we helped invent, I shouldn't even say that, but created a UPS because the organization, the Postal Service, could not handle the letters, the flats, and the post at the same time. So thank goodness at that time we were able to concentrate on letters and post. Well, now you segue back to 2016, we got post, where our letters and our flats have dwindled due to the email. So as you see, it's just evolution, man. We're blessed, especially in the Anoka area, with the employees that we have are second to none. But with that said is that they have to change along with it. So they work with us. They get it, they understand how it goes, and we do constantly change. We're evolving. In the very near future, you're gonna see a bigger, leaner, more environmentally friendly vehicles out on the streets here, but they're designed to deliver packages. They'll be able to stand up in these. It's going to be a mid-size of a UPS, smaller UPS truck. That's what you'll be seeing in the next couple of years.
More coming up next on It's Your History.
Join us on the District Court Show as we take a closer look at the many facets of the judicial system.
We interview other judges, attorneys, police officials, and legal experts to inform you about the laws in our state.
Examining the history of a building that's touched and enhanced so many Anokans' lives throughout all the years gives us a better appreciation for the history of the city itself. Thank you for joining us for this episode of It's Your History. For QCTV, I'm Matt Overstreet.